All right, perfect. We are live today, and we actually have such an exciting guest, returning Jess from Rise at 7, Jessica Maloney. She had previously spoken at our SEO exclusive event last year. So it's almost been about a year since we've last caught up. So we are very excited to have you back on the call. Jessica is actually a search strategy lead at Rise at 7 at the moment. Rise at 7 has been absolutely killing it all over the world. They are currently expanding in New York and the UK at the moment, so that's very exciting news for them. And yeah, Jessica has been in the digital marketing world for about 10 years now, building digital strategies which combine channels including SEO, content, PPC, and social media. She's worked with clients within the finance and e-com departments as well, and yeah, lots of exciting stuff, building up teams and managing teams, pitching to clients. So we are so excited to have you on to chat about all the fun stuff. Jess, thanks for joining us. How are you keeping?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really good. Looking forward to getting chatting about this. It's exciting.
Jess, I think if we can start off by just asking how you got into SEO and yeah, if you could take us through a little bit of your journey and how you got to search strategy lead at Rise at 7 at the moment, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. So to be honest, I think like most SEOs, I kind of ended up falling into it. So my first agency that I was at was called AZO Network, and they are a like B2B kind of science and medical kind of agency. That's the only kind of clients that they work with. And I was started off there as kind of a content writer, writing about very boring things such as like steel and like I can't remember some of the weird machines that I used to write about. Like I probably couldn't tell you much about them now, but yeah, it was interesting. And they hired my old boss there, who was one of the originals kind of SEOs. He worked on like Ask Jeeves and all things like that. So he started the SEO team, and I got an opportunity to kind of join him. And yeah, I was with them for kind of 5 years doing that. So started from just two of us doing SEO. As I left, I think there was maybe 7 or 8 on the team, and I kind of really helped to build that team up to where it was. And I know they're still doing really well now, which is really great to see. And then, yeah, moved on to my next agency, which was more of your kind of traditional agency. So working with kind of the big e-com clients, people like Green King, Snowdonia, like real nice mix of clients. It was a bit of a nice change from some of the more boring kind of sciencey clients I had previously. And yeah, so started there off as essentially kind of SEO lead and actually worked up to head of SEO there as well, and had 2 great years with the team there, working on loads of different things from like tech SEO, content SEO, GMB. Kind of, it was a real mix of what we were working on. And yeah, we were the first team in that agency to actually hire kind of a junior role within the team, which was really nice. And as I left, there was kind of a team of 10 with 2 juniors that would be help train, which was great. But yeah, I just fancied a bit of a change. Like I still love SEO, but I was more interested in that kind of cross-channel side of stuff. So that's kind of when I moved to Rise, and my role now still has a lot to do with SEO. I still kind of work really closely with our SEO team, but there's a lot more of that kind of cross-channel strategy. So understanding kind of how people are searching and how we can use that to influence our kind of PR, how we can use it to influence social, and so on. So that's kind of a very quick stop tour to where I'm at today.
Awesome. I think I actually want to, just while we're on the topic of career journey and progression, touch on how I believe that you were training up junior SEOs or putting together training programs for them. What were some of like the more common things, like factors that you noticed within juniors that at the time that needed to be sort of addressed? Did you experience any like pain points that they were struggling with? And what were some of the more prominent ones that they were sort of, I guess, needing assistance with in terms of training?
I think a lot of the things I've found with the kind of the more junior people, like people who are just coming into SEO, is understanding that kind of commercial aspect. So if you're kind of newer to SEO, you can come in and you get trained on how to do keyword research, how to do a technical audit, and that's great. But it's then kind of having that next step of saying to a client, okay, this thing is wrong with your website, you need to fix it. But it's the why. So adding that commercial aspect that your clients actually care about, because you can say you've got this big list of things you need to fix and it can look really daunting. But if you can then go to them and say, this is kind of going to have the biggest impact. If we can put an ROI on it, great. So that's kind of one of the key things I think is missing with a lot of newer people coming into the industry.
Awesome. And in terms of when you moved from, I guess, if we can say manager into head of SEO, were there any sort of prominent mindset shifts that you experienced at the time, especially in terms of, I guess, maybe client communication side of things, or maybe like any sort of prominent things that you experienced? And what were some of those like shifts that you may have experienced during the time moving from a manager to a head of SEO?
I think a lot of the shifts come more internally in that stage. I think it's how you then communicate with kind of your bosses within the agency, because I did have, when I was kind of like lead on SEO, I did have that kind of communication with the MDs of the business quite regularly. But then there's a bit of a more of an expectation when you are that kind of head of department to really be kind of not only showing the performance of the team and kind of making sure that they're visible with those kind of higher ups, but also, again, that kind of commercial aspect as well, and kind of sharing how your team's running. Because ultimately, when you're kind of head of department, you want to kind of get more money for your team and be able to make more hires, don't you? So you need to have those communication levels really strong.
Awesome.
Jess, on that sort of the commercial aspect, whenever you're talking about it to junior SEOs, are you talking about it from like an internal perspective, or are you showing them the value of their work for their clients and how much it's affecting like the client's bottom line and stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely, for the clients. I think one thing I don't like to do a lot of is, and I think it's important for juniors to know, but not to kind of focus on of the commercials within the business they work in, because I think that can cause sometimes a bit of undue stress for people when they think, oh, maybe I need to kind of push more, and they don't quite understand kind of how they do that. But definitely kind of with the clients and kind of what value they're adding. And I think when you can actually say, this is the value we're going to add, and then 6 months later, work with your junior and just say, this is actually what we have added, it's quite a nice little confidence boost for them as well to see the impact of their work.
Definitely. And I noticed with, I think it was Open Partners, in your last role, it was said there was like a 50-50 split between sort of team management and client management.
Yeah.
How did you manage that split? How did you make sure that both sides were getting sort of equal weight? And do you have any sort of advice or tips to people who maybe stepped into like an SEO manager role or a new head off role, and how they can sort of manage that split?
It's hard. It's very hard, especially when you've got kind of clients who are like wanting all the work from you and you are kind of leading on that account. It isn't easy to do at all. But the main things I do, for me, it's kind of down to organisation. I've used various platforms in the past. ClickUp's a favourite, Notion's a favourite. And just kind of plan your week out and kind of have those splits, and it's never going to go 100% the way that you want it. But if you've got a bit of an idea of how your day's looking, how your week's looking, you can shift stuff kind of depending on when things do pop up as well. I also think delegation is key. It's something I really struggled with at the start, is kind of being able to delegate tasks to other members of the team. I'm a bit of a, not control freak, but I like to know if I like to do something a certain way, and I'm quite happy to just crack on with it. So actually working with the team to delegate tasks to them is something I really, really worked hard on. And I think being able to delegate effectively is a massive skill to kind of learn, really.
Yeah. On that, the delegation side of things, obviously we've talked to a lot of people who struggle to delegate, especially at the start of their management role. How do you sort of effectively delegate, understand when somebody needs to be sort of slightly pushed, and maybe give them a wee bit extra and see if they can grow into it, or maybe give them the right amount of work, so to say?
I think having a good kind of process system internally, and understanding kind of allocation and resource within your team is kind of key to that. If you don't have that, it's really hard to kind of manage. I think there's different ways you can do that. You can have the really expensive kind of project management systems that do it for you, or it can be as simple as kind of a Google sheet, depending on how much you're working on, say, and having weekly stand-ups and saying, okay, what's the priorities for the week as the team? who's working on what and looking if there's any gaps, and if there are, kind of seeing who's got kind of capacity to help pick that up and reassessing that. And just regular check-ins, communication is key for it, really.
Perfect.
Awesome. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about communication, especially just as we were talking about moving from that manager to head off and then into search strategy lead, and just highlighting that cross-channel communication as well. A big thing that like we've sort of seen with chatted about with our previous webinar guests is that issue of being siloed, having a silo department, and experiencing that and trying to break through that. How have you sort of experienced that emphasis within, I guess, it doesn't need to necessarily be Rise at 7, but how do you like approach just cross-departmental communication? And do you have any tips for any other managers or heads off that are also experiencing similar situations where they feel like they're being siloed and they want to try attack that?
Yeah, this is an issue. It's hard, and I think at my previous agency we were working a lot on kind of stopping doing that, because I think it's a typical trait I think you see of many agencies, that you've got SEO doing their thing, PPC doing their thing, and like them kind of coming together at the end to do a report. I think reporting is a good place to start. So when you are looking at kind of like your monthly report, rather than going in and having, this is the SEO section, this is the PR section, working through it in kind of like, what's the word? Like, I suppose pillars of like the work that you're working on. So say, for example, if you were working on a client, an e-com client, and one of your priorities was, I don't know, the dress category, like we really wanted to push dresses for whatever reason, reporting in that way. So with this, what we've done in the dress section, that's when you can cross it over. I think there's loads people can do with reporting with overlaying data. So overlaying PPC and SEO and reporting on kind of search as a whole, because obviously we can see that PPC can bring SEO clicks down depending on how it's been set up. So reporting on that as essentially like a one search vision can bring that together and get clients to understand the channels working better together. I think aside from kind of that reporting, the internal kind of meetings that you have as well. I've worked in places where you have a PPC catch up, you have an SEO catch up with the client, and it's just not productive if you're having kind of one kind of weekly, monthly meeting, kind of all the team with the client. It just helps to everyone understands what's going on in different places, and that's when kind of a lot of cross-channel collaboration can happen quite naturally as well.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it towards the end there, Jess, but do you think it's, whenever you said you were sort of making that change in your last agency, do you think it helped when you came to pitching for new clients that you did have like a more cohesive strategy and like things were more sort of working together a lot better?
Yeah, I think so. And I think with pitching, ultimately what you're pitching isn't the channels, you're pitching the result. So they don't care how you get the result as long as you're getting them ultimately more sales if we're working on like an e-com business. So yeah, I think being able to show that cross-channel kind of strategy also starts to allow you to show that you can think kind of, what's the word? Kind of proactively. So if we go in and say you should be doing all of these channels, but then 6 months down the line we can start to say, okay, that's not working, we can pull that back, but your kind of monthly retainer is going to be the same because we've been thinking of this holistically. Clients are ultimately going to go for that a bit more than you're saying. You've got SEO, you've got PR, you've got PPC, you can either turn them on and off. There's more kind of I think ways to sell it as well.
Definitely.
One last question, just to, I guess, wrap up the communication sort of like topic. You handled client pitching in your previous job, if I'm correct. Awesome. Do you have any tips to maybe someone that is just starting out with that daunting task for the first time? And yeah, I mean, maybe just from your previous experience, what you've learned or anything that you could give to that.
I think the biggest bit of advice with pitching, and I think it's probably one of the biggest worries people have when they go into a pitch, is being asked a question they don't know the answer to. And I think this is a very common kind of piece of advice, but hopefully someone's listening maybe hasn't heard this, and it's if you don't have the answer, just say that. People appreciate the honesty rather than you trying to fumble around and guess an answer, and then they're going to start picking holes and it's going to get more awkward and you're not going to enjoy it as much, kind of thing. So just be honest when you get asked questions. And I think in terms of kind of sitting in a pitch, people aren't looking for you to fail. They've asked you to pitch for a reason. Like agencies get asked to pitch these brands. They've not asked you to pitch to try and catch you out. So everyone's in there for the kind of same reason, and you might not win them all, but no one's in there to kind of try and catch you out and just kind of call you stupid or anything like that. It's never going to be like that, as scary as it can feel.
I love that. That's actually such a positive approach to it. Yeah, and then I think just moving into another topic that sort of relates back to the junior aspect is the topic of onboarding as well. I think I'm trying to weigh out. I would rather actually ask from the top down. So when you were moving from a head of SEO to into like search strategy at Rise at 7, you don't necessarily need to pick on your own experience, but is there anything that you would sort of touch on in terms of the onboarding process, moving companies and moving just into a different role? And is there anything that you would say you wish that there is more of in this process, or wish there was a lack of in this process?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think being the new person in a job is embarrassing. Like starting a job is embarrassing. Like regardless, it's just awkward when you don't know people. I was really lucky that I actually got to meet quite a lot of the team from Rise beforehand, which I think definitely helped. And I think a lot of agencies are open to that. I know it's not necessarily onboarding, but if you have got the opportunity to kind of meet a small portion of the team before you actually start, it can kind of help ease that kind of onboarding nerves. But yeah, for me, like positive onboarding, and I got this kind of with Rise, is just introduction to all the teams, kind of a quick half an hour, 15 minutes with every single team within the business, so they can kind of talk to you and tell you how your team works with them. And it's better kind of hearing it from them than hearing it from your boss, who might have a different perception of how you should be working with that team. So to get those kind of different opinions. And then I do think kind of onboarding kind of in person is good. I appreciate it's not for everyone. Some businesses are completely remote. We're 2 days a week in the office, but it was nice to be able to get into the office quite quickly, to kind of sit next to someone and just ask them questions kind of as I'm doing stuff, as and when, rather than having to wait for them to reply on Teams or something like that. And then just having a bit of a 3-month plan. So say if your probation is 3 months, having that kind of 90-day plan to say, by the end of month 1, we want you to achieve this. By the end of month 2, we want you to achieve that. And you've got those clear goals of what you should be working towards. Because I think when you can start in a new business, it can be a bit like, oh, what am I doing? I'm just doing this little bit of training. I'm doing that. You don't have any purpose at the start. So to have that, I think, is really useful in getting the best out of people as well in those first 3 months.
Definitely. And I think Shreya mentioned it before about you were speaking at our event last year, and obviously I've been to quite a few events. How important is it to go to events and sort of build relationships with people in the community? So when you do get a new job, you probably spoke to people at Rise before, you probably spoke to people at SEO Partners before, just through events and stuff like that. So how easy is it to do that, to actually, first of all, get the opportunity to maybe get an interview with them later on down the line, and then obviously have that familiarity with the team and who you'll be working with?
Yeah, it's not easy for some people. I know, 5 years ago, I was so shy, so I would have hated it. I've definitely had to learn to do more of it, like putting yourself out there and speaking on stage at your event wasn't easy. But yeah, it's a skill to be able to kind of talk to people. I think one of the best ways to start, I think specifically in the SEO industry, is Twitter or X. Because people are very vocal on there. So you can start conversations with people and kind of follow people within the industry to get an idea of kind of who they are. And then from there, I've kind of met people at Brighton based off saying, okay, we're both going to be at Brighton, let's say hi. And it can just be a quick hi, or you can go for a drink or lunch with people. And then there's kind of various networking events at these things as well. So Women in Tech SEO do a great kind of networking event at Brighton every year. So kind of signing up for these additional things is a great way to kind of start to meet and talk to new people there as well. But yeah, it's not easy for everyone. But I would say the events that I've been to, people are very friendly. So if you're kind of stood there and you do go on your own, people are quite happy to come up and say hi and have a quick chat. So it's not as scary as it might seem.
Yeah, I think it's getting that first conversation out of the way is crucial.
Yeah, 100%.
And bring it back just to sort of on the leadership side of things. I was just curious to know, have you ever had to sort of adapt your leadership style? Like, have you ever started it and maybe a couple of months down the line, whether it be not necessarily your style itself, but maybe the people that you're managing, have you had to like change it to adapt to them? And if so, like, how was that, or how was the process?
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone likes to be managed differently. So one of the first things I do if I kind of have someone new reported into me is I'll have a kind of a quick one-to-one just to get to know them on a personal level. I think that's key to kind of have that, but also ask them how they like to be managed. So if it was me, my standard kind of approach is to kind of sit down, walk you through it, like show you how to do it, and then let you go off and do it on your own. That'd be my kind of standard approach. I think that does work for a lot of people. But I've been in cases where people would like to literally sit down next to you and they've been shown it once, but they want to kind of, if it's say a tech analysis for some reason or something like that, they want to go through it point by point and have you kind of next to them for a bit of like moral support getting it through. So I've been able to kind of adapt based on kind of what people want and need. That way, I think it's all about getting to know who that person is, and then you start to understand kind of what support or no support they need from you, basically.
What?
Cool. I want to steal two of Darius's questions. Actually, he usually asks these ones. But was there ever a manager that, like in your previous work experience, that inspired you or helped influence your style of management and or leadership? And can you recall any of those like sort of aspects that they've sort of brought into your career?
Yeah. So my first boss at SEO Network is a guy called Dave Cockett. And as I say, I joined his team. He's got tons of experience in SEO. I'm not going to say how many years. I think he'd kill me. But he's got so much experience in SEO. And I came in knowing the basics. I'd like had a blog at uni and stuff like that. So I dabbled in it a bit. But yeah, he taught me kind of everything. But he was very like relaxed. He's probably one of the most laid back people I've ever met. And he's the same in his kind of management style. He was like, if you need me, I'm here. If not, I know you're going to figure it out on your own. So to me, that's the kind of perfect way of managing. There's no kind of micromanaging in that. He knew to kind of call me up on stuff if I'd done stuff kind of wrong, but in the way that was kind of acceptable and reassuring. Because don't get me wrong, I definitely made some mistakes in that first agency, kind of as you were learning. I remember, I think I removed all the pictures of one website at one point, so that was fun. But yeah, he kind of worked with me on like little mistakes like that to make sure it didn't happen again, but without being kind of controlling or anything like that. So yeah, he's definitely a highlight.
Oh, I love when people believe in you and you don't even believe in yourself at that point. You'll figure it out. Don't worry. I believe in you. The second question that I wanted to ask was, you mentioned the first 3 months being crucial to you and in the onboarding process and things like that. When you are hiring yourself, or if you've ever had hiring experience in the past, how would like those onboarding experiences like, and what did you sort of consider important when onboarding your own teammates into your sort of teams?
I think that like 3-month plan is kind of crucial, but to have that kind of broken down into something that they can kind of digest. So I think having like an onboarding pack for people is key. And then they can either kind of spend their time digesting it. Like within that, you'd have like your 30-day plan, what your goals are, bit of a breakdown of kind of who you're speaking to, why you're speaking to them, and then any additional kind of process things like, so this is how we do keyword research, or this is how we do that. And they can then have that to kind of digest on their own. But depending on their kind of, I suppose, learning style, they might want to have kind of more meetings and stuff with you. So it's having those kind of regular catch-ups. I'd put a catch-up in first week at least, start of every day, end of every day. And then just seeing kind of what they need going forward and making sure that they're getting the support they need to kind of thrive over the next kind of 3 months. And before they go out into the wild with the clients.
And in that onboarding process, how do you consider company culture to fall into that, and make sure that sort of they fall in line with the company culture, but also that they sort of become absorbed into it, and I guess communicate that company culture through to them effectively.
Yeah, I think that's a massive part, and I think part of that leans into having those kind of meetings with the different teams as well. I think with onboarding, it can be very easy to fall into the trap of keeping that new person just in the little bubble of your team and not branching out to the kind of wider business, whether that is the other channels, whether it's client services, whether it's people who they won't necessarily have much time with, like finance or stuff like that. But making sure that they have those touch points early on is kind of key to kind of getting that culture right. And I think in the world where people are kind of remote, having like the good, if it's Slack channels, we use Google kind of channels, but having those set up, and not only just kind of client focused ones, things that are like, we've got one that's called Make Some Noise, which is about celebrating kind of people's wins in the week, and there's always loads of chatter going on in there and people cheering each other on. And then we've got things like just a random channel where people just drop rubbish like memes and things like that, but kind of getting them involved in that so you can have a bit of that kind of company, I don't know, banter without kind of necessarily being sat next to someone.
Awesome. And this is more of, I guess, a personal question from our side, is that you put in your personal experience that you had helped grow the previous team from 3 to 8 within 12 months. Is that correct?
Yes, those numbers sound right. Yeah.
How?
It was hard. So yeah, when I joined, there was 3 of us, and there was some hires that came within that I wasn't as involved with. But the biggest kind of push there was the juniors within that team. So as I mentioned, open partners have kind of this. They've always had a bit of a flat structure. When I joined, all the roles were either partner or associate partner. And then, yes, SEO was the first one to kind of get a junior associate partner within that team. And we had 2 hires when I was there who were both brilliant. It was just a case of working with the kind of MDs, working with finance to understand the needs of SEO. And I think sometimes SEO commercially can be a bit misunderstood because you need a lot of time to do a lot of the work that we do, and maybe not as much time as some of the other channels. So getting that kind of hire over the line can be difficult. But I suppose just repositioning it as, okay, this is how much time we actually need. This is who we've got. This is how we need it. Was like how we actually got that to the bigger team, which I believe is even bigger now, which is great.
Awesome. That's usually such a difficult sort of, I guess, conversation when we have with our previous webinar guests, is just like identifying that right time to hire. So identifying the right time to hire like 5 more people is very
yeah, I mean, it was only 1 month. We did kind of spread it out, but we were very lucky. We had some kind of big client wins as well, which definitely helped get it over the line.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And I think Darius, you go. Yeah.
No, sorry, Jess, I was just wondering, obviously from like, that's talking about more sort of juniors. See, for people like yourself moving into like a very sort of top level role, is there anything that you would advise like somebody moving into a new head off role to sort of incorporate within like a first sort of, I don't know, like 90 days or something like that?
I think if it's like a completely new business, I think it's different if you're kind of being promoted up, because I feel like you've done a lot of the back work to get that kind of head of promotion. But if you're kind of a new head of moving into kind of a new business, it's having those conversations with the CEO to understand their thoughts of your team at the minute as well. Any perceptions of the team, you want to understand what people think, because they could potentially be incorrect, and you want to kind of reposition the team within the first 90 days. So it's understanding what people think of the team. It's getting your head around the commercial side of stuff as well. So understanding kind of what the goal is for the next 12 months, how far off that goal you currently are, and understanding any gaps. And then, working with the other channels to kind of understand where they're at. And I think coming in as kind of a head of a team in that kind of way is when you can start to figure out where those gaps are, but also figure out very quickly where you can fill those gaps, because you're completely fresh. You've not been kind of stuck in it for however many months, and you kind of can only see certain things. You've got like a complete fresh perspective on it as well.
Yeah, love it.
I just want to ask a quick question on your current role at Rise at 7. This is for you to just boast about the company and how amazing they are. But how is it going? How have you been finding it? And I guess, like, are you enjoying it there? They've just been doing really well. Rise at 7 have been just really killing it. So, have you been enjoying the experience so far? And how's it going?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Imagine if I said no. No, it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I think, as I said, like, moving into a bit of a different role was what I needed. I needed a bit more of that variety, and I've been insanely lucky to work with some of the best minds within the marketing business and get kind of fresh perspectives on everything, and constantly learning, constantly trying to be innovative in what we're doing. And yeah, it's a really kind of fun team to work within, because the ideas are just sometimes so far out the park. But it's like when clients go for it, it's great. So yeah, nice to have kind of more of a creative side of what I'm doing in my day to day, and working with some people with great experience across various different channels as well.
Awesome, perfect. Well, that wraps up our half an hour with Jess. Time flew so quickly, but we appreciate you so much for coming on, and just for your advice and your insights across the board. Was very unique and insightful. So thank you, Jess, so much for coming on. All the best with Rise at 7, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks both. It's been great.
Cheers, Jess.
See you later. Bye.